Hey, happy Monday, everyone. Hope you are doing well. This is the first Wrangle where I'll be going at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And, I changed up the time because I was thinking about it. Our friends over there in Europe were asleep half the time when I was doing these Wrangles. So I think this time will work out better. It's going to be about 9 o'clock on the Pacific Coast, around 4 or 5 in Europe. And I think it's around 9 p.m. in India. So I think that'll work out for more people better that way. Anyway, for today, we'll be talking about some news that I found, multiple articles, things that are going on. And the topic for today's Wrangle is art tests. Are they ethical? So to get us started, let me share the screen real quick, and we'll talk about a few cool things that are going on. So first up here, we have Lucasfilm approving a fan-made Unreal Engine 5 version of Knights of the Old Republic. And if you're like me, I loved the Knights of the Old Republic series back in the day. It's kind of amazing to me that Disney hasn't gone more this route with the movies and with the video games. I mean, that whole old Star Wars world was just so cool. But as you can imagine, an Unreal version of this is pretty darn awesome. Right now, it looks like they have a lot of assets going on for this whole production. But basically, this is, I believe, supposed to be a fan-made film thing going on. It's not really like a video game that you can go around and do things with, but it still just looks so darn cool that I had to share it with you guys. So we got some lighting. I think actually even towards the end here, we have some sweet like lightsaber stuff going on. Yeah, Millennium Falcon, or Ebon Hawk, that is. Got Revan. So anyway, it's cool stuff. Like I said, I really wish they made this kind of thing anyway for Unreal Engine. Like, I'd totally buy this game if it was actually turning into a game. But I just want to share that with you guys because I thought that was pretty cool. So that's one thing. Another thing, on the more boring side of things, but really cool, is this solid fluid interaction with surface tension dominant contact solver. I believe this is a paper that examines the surface tension with water and the way that interacts with different objects. And so I don't understand quite the details to the same level that these folks do, but this model is implemented numerically under a hybrid Eulerian-Lagrangian framework where the membrane is modeled as a cylindrical mesh and the liquid volume is simulated on a background Cartesian grid, which is a lot of fancy words for improved water tension. So it looks like the way that, especially you can see this leaf here, sits on the water, it kind of, it bends the water around an object in a much more accurate way. And from my understanding, this does so through a combination of like a RBD collision and some other interesting
we propose a numerical method to model surface tension dominance and momentum between
them. But anyway, that's something to check out for all you folks who are interested in fluid simulation.
Liquid membrane. We
something to keep an eye on.
Fine-scale wave propagation stimulated by the solid's motion.
Fluid simulation is one area that people are always just changing things on. Yeah, see how it kind of bends in that interaction right there? I think that's kind of what they're working on.
In this example, our method realistically reproduces the surface tension weakening effect caused by surface active constituents.
But anyway, that's something to look out for if you're into fluid sims. Unity also acquired the devs of SpeedTree. And this can actually be pretty big news because SpeedTree, as you guys may know, is kind of the go-to place for all foliage. And the fact that Unity is acquiring them is pretty interesting because I kind of wonder what Unreal is going to do in response to that. I mean, I can't imagine Unity wants their SpeedTree trees going over to Unreal and Epic Games. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And who knows, maybe SpeedTree might actually get a bit cheaper. That would also be super awesome and something that I'm going to try to keep an eye out for. The one thing that's been preventing me from teaching more SpeedTree is just the price, honestly. It's just super expensive right now. But anyway, that's also something interesting. And speaking of acquisitions, Epic Games also acquired Sketchfab. So as you guys may know, Sketchfab is the leading assets browsing repository on the internet. And that makes sense because Epic Games is trying to populate their engine with a bunch of cool models and things like that. But all very interesting things happening. It all kind of goes back around to the fact that real-time engines are going to really creep into all the other industries really quickly. I mean, they're acquiring all the major players in the game right now. And, well, it's just where things are going. So it's always good to keep a pulse on what's happening with them. Even if you're not in the real-time space, I think it's really important to keep track. Okay, and then lastly, I want to give a shout out to Nicholas Brown. I met Nicholas this past week, 8-Bit Assaults. And yeah, he's a swell guy. I like his art. Figured I'd show you guys some of his stuff. He has these really cool noise displacement maps and things like that that he likes to sell. And even just stuff like this. But anyway, I told him I'd give him a shout out and share some of his work with you guys because it's pretty cool. Especially these displacement maps down here. I like this kind of scratchy stuff. So if you're somebody who uses displacement maps, this could be someone to check out. Okay, well, let's go ahead and actually move on to the topic of the day, which is, again, art tests. Are they ethical? Let me go ahead and pull this up, and we will check it out. Art tests. Are they ethical? Let's explore the positives and the negatives for both studios and artists when it comes to this topic. And to start off with the positives, we'll say that the first positive is for the studio, because the studio gets to figure out how good you really are. And so what happens a lot of times is that people will hide behind other people's work, right? You've worked on a shot, you tell the studio that you've done XYZ, but in reality, a lot of that was somebody else on the screen. The studios have to deal with this. They have to deal with not really knowing exactly what somebody did. They just have to kind of go on their word and hopefully the references that they provide and take a shot in the dark as to the quality of the artist. With art tests, though, you get to really know that better because you have a deadline, you have some kind of project that's related to what you're hiring them for, and you get a sense of how quickly they work and at what quality. So that's a big, big reason why studios do art tests in the first place, right? So that's a pro for the studio. Now, a pro for the artist could be that you might get a cool piece on your demo reel. Chances are, if you are following a studio close enough to see if they have art tests, then that's probably the kind of work you want to be doing. And they may give you a really cool prompt to bring you in that direction. So if that's the case, then that could be a really cool opportunity to add something to your reel as a student or as really just any 3D artist, right? Now, along with that, we can also say that for the studio, this is going to attract people who are really passionate about their brand. These are people who follow their website, who follow their social media, who are really invested in their brand and what they're trying to do. And the studio loves that for multiple reasons. They love that because they can probably pay that person less, right? If the person is just so excited to work for Studio XYZ, they're totally cool with taking less money as long as they can, you know, get the opportunity to work on something, right? So the studio does like that. The other thing the studio likes is the fact that you have people who are talented and really passionate working for you, and that creates a great product, usually. At least for a period of time, that's going to bring a lot of good energy to a particular art project. So that's another positive for the studio. It's just a natural way of finding people who are really passionate about your company in particular. And the last positive thing I'll say about art tests is that if you have your goal set specifically for that studio, let's say you want to work at Blizzard or Activision or Naughty Dog, whatever it is, right? If that has been your life goal and you want to start building your relationship with that studio, this could be a great way to begin that relationship and them getting to know you. I'll talk about the relationship in general and why it's actually kind of a con for these art tests, but in general, you could start a dialogue with the recruiter. You could get people getting to know you specifically, and maybe that would be an initial step towards reaching your goals. Those are the positives. Now, how about the negatives? What's the problem with art tests? Well, one con is that art tests are pretty much like contract work without the pay, which is actually a pro for the studio because they get all this free work without having to pay anybody money. But typically what a professional studio will do is they will take a look at your resume. They'll recognize, yes, there is a risk to hiring you because they don't really know how much of your reel is you and everything I mentioned before. But they take the risk by giving you a small chunk of work. They pay you your rates and they see how it goes. This is how things ought to work in most situations, right? And I'll talk about why this is actually better, in my opinion, than art tests for the studio as well. But ideally, what needs to happen for a studio to get to know you is that they would hire you via contract for a period of time. They would throw you a bit of work that's not mission critical so that they can see how you do. And if they like your work, then they'll keep on hiring you in the future. So that is a con for the artist. So not getting paid for your time is obviously a big con. Now, another con is that this sets the tone for paying the artist less money. Think about this, and this is kind of going into the psychology of the situation. If you are really, really invested in an art project, let's say you work on something for, I don't know, 3 weeks, and you're just busting your tail trying to make this thing awesome. You're investing a lot of your time, your energy, your heart and soul into this piece of art. Well, you're not going to want to let that gig go awry in any way, especially if you win. So, imagine you win the contest, you win the job, and the time to talk about pay is now here. Are you really going to blow up your chances of getting this job by trying to push for more money than they want? Probably not. And the studios know this. The studios know that the more time they can get you to invest in this gig, the more you want to see the gig actually go through. And that means that they can try to lowball you and you're less likely to push back because you want this thing to work out. So do keep in mind that this whole situation will set the tone for you getting paid less. So here's con number 3, and this is kind of a niche situation, honestly, but it's something that you should be aware of. It has been known to happen where studios will, let's say, send an artist an NDA and a bunch of legal mumbo jumbo, and then use their work on the art contest for a film, for a video game, for something that they're doing. Which basically means that they got a bunch of free work, and you didn't get anything in return. This has happened before. Again, it's a niche situation, but it's something that you have to think about whenever you see an art contest. Some studios are going to try to get away with this. like I said, studios who try to get away with this for long realize that it's just a big hassle to try to play these weird games. And a lot of them don't do it just for ethical reasons, for the liability and the risk of that. But this situation is barely legal, if not actually completely illegal. So you should avoid that if possible. I know it sounds like all these things really just are cons for the artist, but there are cons for the studio as well. The problem with art tests is that it's going to attract juniors. It's going to attract people who have extra time on their hands. And people with extra time are usually not your high-end professionals at whatever the gig is. So if a studio is trying to find high-quality, experienced 3D artists, this is not how you do it. An art test is not how you go about it because, again, your professionals never work for free. Your professionals are probably busy doing something else right now, and it's just not a good way for the studio to attract that kind of talent. And lastly, if we take a step back and we look at the situation in general, what we'll find is that this creates an unbalanced, unhealthy relationship between the artist and the studio. The studio is asking the artist to do work. The artist is not getting anything in return, or not getting promised anything in return. And so because of that dynamic, it already sets the relationship to be unbalanced in the studio's favor. So, in conclusion, are art tests ethical? My answer is no, they're not. Even if somebody asks you for 3 hours of an art test, I still don't think it's ethical because any work you do for the studio ought to be paid. You ought to be compensated for your time. It's not ideal because it creates an unbalanced relationship between you and the studio. And ideally, the way this should work is that the studio pays you for a small bit of contract work. They see how you do, and they go from there. That's how this situation should play out in most situations. And that risk should be on the shoulders of the studios, right? The studios should be the one putting the risk out there and giving people these small contracts, putting the money up front, because the investment is not a whole lot compared to the return they get when they find a good artist. The studio also gets a great return by trying to ideally establish a healthy relationship with that individual, and that could lead to long-term success for everyone involved. So, in conclusion, art tests are not ethical. I don't recommend you doing them. And, well, if you are a student, and I will say there is kind of an exception to this, if you do like contests and you do like that sort of stuff, then go with the rookies. Go with something that's not directly the studio that's trying to hire you, right? Because in that situation, you're not giving a studio work without pay. You're just entering into a competition, and then from there, they can set you up with someone else. And so the relationship between you and the other studio, if you do win the contest, is still healthy, and it's not set off on the wrong foot. So if you do want to do art tests, go with the rookies, go with some sort of educational art test, and that's a much better way of going about it. All right. So that means, my friends, art tests are not necessarily your friends. There was actually a really great question that Patrick brought up, and he was saying, does this apply to coding tests for pipelines and R&D? And in my opinion, it still does. The reason why is because what the big problem is that you're not establishing a healthy relationship between you and that studio. Now, I will say that, okay, if let's say you go into an interview and they test you in the interview and it only takes maybe 2 hours of your time, that's not so bad. If it's something that takes a whole week of your time, or it's something that takes so much time that a full-time professional wouldn't normally have time for it, then that's when I truly disagree with it. So for an employer to ask for something like that, I would say if there is wiggle room in that, then it is probably like within the range of about 2 to 3 hours of your time, but not more than that, honestly. Otherwise, they're just searching for people who are green. They're not really searching for people who are full-time professionals who already work a job. And so that kind of gives you a clue as to what they're up to. And also, if this is part of an application, then I would say that it's, again, kind of the same advice, something that doesn't take more than 2 or 3 hours of your time. Some of these projects takes weeks or months to actually do a good job on it. And that's where I draw the line and I say, well, again, a full-time professional is not going to have time to do that. And they're just looking for cheap work. So that in general would be my opinion about that situation. Let's see. Well, if you guys have any other comments or questions you'd like to add to that, please let me know. I also want to show you what I'm up to on CG Forge. I'm super, super close to getting the Node Bible fully put together, which is very exciting. My goal has been 50 entries for this particular release. And, over the weekend, I actually got done with my 50th write-up on this whole thing. So let me go to the homepage real quick and show you what that looks like. Okay. So we go here to CG Forge. Check this out, you guys. Well, actually, hold on. I gotta go actually browse for the page. So bear with me here for a second. Well, you know what? Actually, I'll just pull this up later. It's not really. Hold on. Courses, Node Bible. There we go. I don't want to go digging through all my stuff here, but there we go. The Node Bible, useful node references. This is super cool if you haven't seen it yet. Basically, this is like the user docs for Houdini, but it's way, way better because you can go to any one of these parameters, and I've written things out in a way that's much easier to understand. So as an example, if we take this VDB SOP, the user docs don't really do a great job of telling you how to use this thing. And so I basically break this all down. Within this Node Bible doc, I have links that link to my other videos within courses. So if you are a subscriber, you basically get this whole ecosystem of data and things that all kind of connect with each other. So let's say you're watching Houdini for the New Artist 2. I use this node. You'll see a link pop up that'll bring you to this Node Bible for further study. And if you're in the Node Bible, then I'll also give you links to specific courses. So, I mentioned here to check out the VDB lesson in Houdini for the New Artist 2. Check that out. You're right there. So this whole Node Bible isn't just an encyclopedia. It's a whole ecosystem of information, and it basically gives you information as you're learning so that you have it when you need it. So super, super excited about that. Okay, well, besides that, if you haven't followed me yet on social media, there's my Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. Also, let me know what you guys think about this new format. I'm kind of experimenting with what a good flow feels like with the Wrangle here. I want to have some useful career advice for you guys. I want to have news. I want to give people shout outs and show student work and maybe do some critiques. So if you guys have work you'd like me to share, if you guys have any comments or suggestions on what you'd like to see in the Wrangle, let me know. I think this new time is going to work a whole lot better for everyone. So I'm excited about that. And if there's no other comments or questions, then I hope you guys have a great week. So until next time, I'll see you later.